guna memenuhi kebutuhan sumber daya manusia di bidang transportasi darat. Pada tanggal 18 September 1951, Presiden pertama Republik Indonesia, Insinyur Soekarno, meresmikan Akademi Lalu Lintas (ALL) yang sekarang telah berubah nama menjadi Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD). Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD) merupakan sekolah kedinasan di bawah naungan Kementerian Perhubungan, di mana sekolah ini ditujukan untuk mencetak perwira perhubungan yang berakhlak cerdas dan prima. Perubahan ini membawa dampak yang cukup besar bagi kampus biru ini, karena dengan berubahnya Sekolah Tinggi Transportasi Darat menjadi politeknik akan membuka kesempatan lebih besar bagi kampus ini untuk lebih bisa bersaing dengan sekolah tinggi lain di Indonesia, baik kedinasan maupun non-kedinasan. Diploma 4 Transportasi Darat. Program Diploma 4 Transportasi Darat merupakan program studi unggulan di Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD). Diploma 3 Manajemen Transportasi Darat. Pada program Diploma 3 Manajemen Transportasi Darat mencetak taruna-taruni yang ahli dalam mengidentifikasi aspek-aspek yang berkaitan dengan permintaan dan pelayanan transport di bidang jalan. Diploma 3 Manajemen Perkeretaapian. Adanya program studi manajemen perkeretaapian bertujuan untuk menciptakan perwira perhubungan di bidang kereta api. Tidak hanya dalam hal akademik, taruna-taruni di PTDI STTD juga dipersiapkan dengan pelatihan fisik tiap pagi dan sore hari demi mewujudkan perwira perhubungan dengan kondisi fisik yang prima. Para taruna-taruni di PTDI STTD juga bisa dengan mudah untuk menyalurkan bakat dan minat mereka, baik dalam hal kesenian, olahraga, serta di bidang lainnya. Seluruh perangkat Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD) terus berusaha untuk mengembangkan kualitas perwira perhubungan yang dicetak tiap tahunnya dengan terus membuat inovasi baru dan terus mendukung kegiatan taruna-taruni Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia demi majunya SDM di bidang transportasi.
Engkau gemilang, malam cemerlang, bagaikan bintang timur sedang mengembang. Tak jemu-jemu mata memandang, aku namakan di kau juwita malam.
Sinar matamu menari-nari, masuk menembus ke dalam gantung kalbu. Aku terpikat, masuk melangkah. Apa daya, asmara sudah melekat. Juwita malam, cita kita segera tiba. Di jati negara kita akan berpisah.
Berilah nama, alamat serta
Esok lusa boleh kita jumpa pula.
Oh, esok lusa boleh kita jumpa pula. Dari Sabang sampai Merauke berjajah pulau-pulau, sambung menyambung menjadi satu. Itulah Indonesia, Indonesia tanah airku. Aku berjanji padamu menjunjung tanah airku, tanah airku Indonesia.
Sabang sampai Merauke menjadi pulau-pulau, sambung menyambung menjadi satu. Itulah Indonesia,
Indonesia tanah airku. Aku berjanji padamu menjunjung tanah airku, tanah airku Indonesia. Menjunjung tanah airku, tanah airku Indonesia.
Pembangunan harus diarahkan untuk menghasilkan manfaat nyata untuk masyarakat. Wujudkan asa, majukan Indonesia. Selamat Hari Perhubungan Nasional 2020.
guna memenuhi kebutuhan sumber daya manusia di bidang transportasi darat. Pada tanggal 18 September 1951, Presiden pertama Republik Indonesia, Insinyur Soekarno, meresmikan Akademi Lalu Lintas (ALL) yang sekarang telah berubah nama menjadi Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD). Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD) merupakan sekolah kedinasan di bawah naungan Kementerian Perhubungan, di mana sekolah ini ditujukan untuk mencetak perwira perhubungan yang berakhlak cerdas dan prima. Perubahan ini membawa dampak yang cukup besar bagi kampus biru ini, karena dengan berubahnya Sekolah Tinggi Transportasi Darat menjadi politeknik akan membuka kesempatan lebih besar bagi kampus ini untuk lebih bisa bersaing dengan sekolah tinggi lain di Indonesia, baik kedinasan maupun non-kedinasan. Diploma 4 Transportasi Darat merupakan program studi unggulan di Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD). Diploma 3 Manajemen Transportasi Darat. Pada program Diploma 3 Manajemen Transportasi Darat mencetak taruna-taruni yang ahli dalam mengidentifikasi aspek-aspek yang berkaitan dengan permintaan dan pelayanan transport di bidang jalan. Diploma 3 Manajemen Perkeretaapian. Adanya program studi manajemen perkeretaapian bertujuan untuk menciptakan perwira berhubungan di bidang kereta api. Tidak hanya dalam hal akademik, taruna-taruni di PTDI STTD juga dipersiapkan dengan pelatihan fisik tiap pagi dan sore hari demi mewujudkan perwira berhubungan dengan kondisi fisik yang prima. Para taruna-taruni di PTDI STTD juga bisa dengan mudah untuk menyalurkan bakat dan minat mereka, baik dalam hal kesenian, olahraga, serta di bidang lainnya. Seluruh perangkat Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD) terus berusaha untuk mengembangkan kualitas perwira perhubungan yang dicetak tiap tahunnya dengan terus membuat inovasi baru dan terus mendukung kegiatan taruna-taruni Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia demi majunya SDM di bidang transportasi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to International Webinar, Benchmarking on the Role of Transport Regulatory in Managing Public Transport Integration to Other Countries. Please be reminded that the webinar will start in a few minutes. You are cordially invited to stay online at this virtual room because the ceremony will process in exact time. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to one of the most awaited webinar in the world. This is International Webinar, Benchmarking on the Role of Transport Regulatory in Managing Public Transport Integration to Other Countries. Held by the Polytechnic of Land Transportation Indonesia, STTD, Human Resources Development Agency of Transportation, and Ministry of Transportation Indonesia. It is therefore will provide a certificate for all the participants who has fulfilled the attendance list. In the below screen, you can find the running text in the description box of the YouTube that provide the registration link for you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to International Webinar, Benchmarking on the Role of Transport Regulatory in Managing Public Transport Integration to Other Countries, held by Polytechnic of Land Transportation Indonesia, STTD, Human Resources Development Agency of Transportation, and Ministry of Transportation, Indonesia. It is an honor to me to inform you that among us here, we have the Excellency Minister of Transportation of Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Budi Karya Sumadi, the Honorable Minister Sugihardjo, the Head of Human Resources Development Agency of Transportation, Ministry of Transportation of Indonesia. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Mathew Tharakan from Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, United States of America, Ms. Hugh Park from Intelligent Transportation Korea, South Korea, Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro from Special Representative for International Affairs, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, Japan, Mr. François Doulet from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, France, Mr. Bambang Prihartono from Special Advisor to the Chief of Staff for Infrastructure, Energy and Investment, Presidential Staff Office of Indonesia. All officers from Ministry of Transportation of Indonesia, and our distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today, we have several agendas. Welcoming remarks, keynote speech, photo session, our speaker's presentation, and follow-up discussions before we are closing our event tonight. So now, let us start with the whole sequence of the program. Let's sing our national anthem. All the participants, please stand up. All the participants, please be seated. Without any further ado, let us start the function. As the host of this international webinar initiative, the Honorable Head of Human Resources Development Agency of Transportation will deliver the welcoming speech. The room is yours.
His Excellency Minister of Transportation of Republik Indonesia, Bapak Budi Karya Sumadi, distinguished speakers and discussants. There are Mr. Mathew Tharakan from Pennsylvania Transportation Youth Authority, USA, Ms. Su Park from ITS Korea. How are you, Sue? Long time no see. Nice to meet you again. Yamakoshi Toshihiro-san from MLIT, Japan. Good evening. Mr. François Doulet from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, France. Pak Bambang Prihartono from Presidential Staff Office, Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good evening. On behalf of Human Resources Development Agency, Ministry of Transportation of Republic Indonesia, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all in this international webinar on the topic of benchmarking of the role of transportation regulatory in managing public transport integration to others' countries. Thank you for being in this virtual event. I would also express my sincere appreciation to the Minister of Transportation, Bapak Budi Karya Sumadi, that gives direction for Human Resources Development Agency to hold the international webinar in this evening. In today's webinar, our agenda is focusing on exchanging information from international practitioners on the management of public transport by the transport authorities and the best practices. Since the transport authority must be able to ensure the public transport seamless service, safety, and security, there are several challenges in managing integrated services. In the case of Indonesia, and very especially in the greater Jakarta area. Therefore, this webinar will focus on, first, the establishment, history of transport authorities, including the underlying regulation in several countries. Second, the institutional form, role, and financial scheme of other countries' transport regulatory. Third, the challenges and strategies in regulating and managing public transport as a lesson learned for its potential to be implemented in the greater Jakarta and Indonesia generally. We do hope this webinar supplies us more ideas and full understanding in transport authority development, especially from other countries' experience. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am firmly convinced that your active participation and valuable contribution will provide substantial outcomes toward our effort in improving public transport services in Indonesia. Thank you for bringing your energy, knowledge, and expertise. I wish you all a very successful webinar. I thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Sugihardjo. It was a delighting speech of you. And congratulations for your new position as the senior trainer, and we are looking forward to having your guidance and leadership in your new role. As the head of the nation to work on transportation matter, the Excellency Minister has never failed to impress us his work for the Republic of Indonesia. Therefore, allow me to call on our Excellency Minister of Transportation. The room is yours, sir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning and very good evening, all of you. Our distinguished guest, Mr. Mathew Tharakan from Financial Transport Authority USA, Ms. Shu Park, ITS Korea, South Korea, Yamakoshi Toshihiro, Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transportation, Japan, Mr. Jen Ronquist Doulet, Minister of Foreign Affairs, France, Mr. Bambang Prihartono, Presidential of Staff Office, Indonesia, and Mr. Sugihardjo, Head of Human Resources Development, Transportation Ministry. Despite the difficult time we are confronting, I hope that everyone here will always be good health and keep their spirit up until the pandemic is over. And on this special occasion, I sincerely appreciate your attendance at the international webinar titled Benchmarking on the Role of Transportation Regulatory in Managing Public Transport Integration to Other Countries, organized by Polytechnic of Land Transportation Indonesia, STTD, the Human Resources Development Agency, Ministry of Transportation. This webinar aims to discuss and share knowledge about development, challenge, and strategies of the transportation regulation, which can contribute to resolving public transport management problem in the Greater Jakarta area and other big city in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenge of the urban transportation currently include the high dependency on the private vehicle, both motorbike and car. The number of trips in Jakarta, Bogor, Depok, Tangerang, and Bekasi, Greater Jakarta area continue to increase from the year to year. In 2019, there were at least 88 million trips a day of the total number of trips. The usage of public transportation is considerably small. Departing from the fact, several efforts to organize an integrated transportation system are carried out by referring to Presidential Decree number 55 of 2018 concerning the Greater Jakarta Transportation Master Plan. The presence of the decree has marked a new chapter in the development of integrated urban transportation by the central as well as local government in Jakarta, Bogor, Depok, Tangerang, and Bekasi. The Greater Jakarta Transportation Authority, BPTG, has an important role in addressing the various issues to occur in the Greater Jakarta, which are geographically integrated into the single agglomeration area. Therefore, the transportation arrangements is this area cannot carry out patiently by its local government. In the President Decree number 101 of 2015, BPTG is appointed to bring the coordination between the central and local government throughout the Greater Jakarta are organized and managed in the integrated public transportation system. Our honorable guest, the assistant of the Greater Jakarta Transport Authority is expected to be a problem solver and a role model for other cities in Indonesia, is creating a reliable urban transportation system. With better public transportation service, more and more people will shift from their private vehicle and use public transport. They will have a significant impact socially, economically, environmentally. However, in the key task is undertaken, the Greater Jakarta Transport Authority also face several challenges in solving transport problem in the Jabodetabek area. I believe that some effort have progressive, as we can see here. Public transportation is particularly getting better each day. However, the Greater Jakarta Transport Authority still need organizational development and strengthening to be able to carry out its duties properly. The Greater Jakarta Transport Authority must be a powerful organization so that it can embrace other institutions and local government is realizing its noble goal. Ladies and gentlemen, how transport regulatory in the other country harmonize and synchronize the transportation planning of their respective region. This webinar will bring us perspective on how the World Organization, the Transport Regulatory, with the benchmark from America, from South Korea, from Japan, and France. Great thanks to our speaker that have spared their various time to share valuable information and knowledge. I greatly expect that the agenda will bring us a clarity regarding steps to be taken to answer those challenges and strengthening the organization shortly. Finally, with this few remarks, this international webinar of the benchmarking on the role of the transportation regulatory in managing public transportation integrated to other countries is officially open. I wish you successful and fruitful discussion. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Our Excellency Minister of Transportation. That was truly a very enlightening speech you delivered in this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to inform you that the next agenda is photo and video session. I will arrange the conduct for you. May you switch on your camera, please. Okay, the committee, please be prepared. Okay, everyone, give your best poses to the camera, please. Okay, I will count down in 3. 3, 2, 1. Cheers! Again, in 3. 3, 2, 1. Cheers! Thank you, everyone. The time for photo and video session is already up. I would like to invite everybody to get back to the prescribed monitors in the Zoom virtual event. Excellency Minister of Transportation and the Honorable Head of Human Resources Development Agency of Transportation could pleasantly leave the room. Thank you. A transport regulatory, or usually we call public transport regulatory, is a regulatory which regulates or administers transportation-related matters. The transport regulatory makes link between the strategic level, or the political decision makers, and the operational level, or the public transport operators. Statutorily, it is responsible for a wide range of function in order to establish a reliable public transport services. Now, we're gonna have more insights on how the role of transport regulatory can improve the public transport integration. Without any further ado, allow me to call on our moderator for today's event to lead the discussions. Please welcome the Transportation Attaché for the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Hananto Prakoso. The time is yours.
Thank you, Agisna. Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our international webinar, Benchmarking on the Role of Transport Regulatory in Managing Public Transport Integration to Other Countries. Before we begin, allow me to introduce myself. I am Hananto Prakoso, and it is my honor to be your moderator for today's international webinar. We would like to express gratitude for all for making the time to attending this international webinar. We hope everyone in a good health, and I think you should be proud of this webinar because right now, this webinar is attended by close to 1,000 participants. And of course, by the audience of YouTube of Land Transportation Academy, we would like to express our gratitude to all of you. In the Greater Jakarta, it is recorded that the number of trips reached 88 million per day by 2020, and it is evident that this number keeps rocketing every year. This is partly due to the attractiveness of the Greater Jakarta to the working age group, making this agglomeration area a magnet for migrants. This great number demands to be accommodated. Currently, the majority prefers using private vehicles and leads the share of public transportation users in low level. According to the situation in this webinar, we are trying to look for an experience and lesson learned from other countries how a transport or transit authority tackles urban transportation problem. I know that we are looking forward to our next part of our webinar, the presentation from extraordinary speakers from Indonesia and also overseas. They will provide us with insight about the role of transport authority in managing urban transportation problem. Right after, of course, this is the important things, we will have question and answer session before the end of our webinar. To ask question, please put your question to the Q&A box, question and answer box with the particular format. Type your name, space, question, space, and to whom the question is directed. I remind you to ask the question, just type your name, space, question, space, and to whom the question is directed. Again, the Q&A session will be held in the end of discussion session. Without further ado, on behalf of the organizing committee, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our international webinar, a dedication from the Ministry of Transportation of Indonesia. The first presentation will be given by Manager, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, SEPTA, United States of America. He has 30 years of transportation operations engineering management, and also professional expertise in the field of rail vehicle engineering at Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. He has been involved with the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris campaigns infrastructure committee early on and was able to develop proposal to increase employment and economic opportunity within the Made in America program. He played a key role in helping to take US infrastructure systems to the next level with a mission to provide a world-class, cost-effective, and reliable public transportation system for the entire country. Please welcome Mr. Mathew Tharakan. Once again, good morning, Mr. Tharakan. Although we always want to hear you more, but we only have 20 minutes, and allow me to remind you when the time is 5 minutes left. You may start your presentation, sir. Time is yours.
Thank you. Can I have the slides up?
Committee, please assist Mr. Tharakan to play the slide.
Good morning to everyone. I cannot see the slide, unfortunately, some reason or other. It's coming in a small screen. Can you enlarge it a little further so that I can see it? Okay, my name is Mathew Tharakan. I work for Transportation Authority in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a small town of small city, in fact, about closer to 5 million people. And our transportation provides transportation in 5 county areas. Next slide, please. I just wanted to give you an idea how the US Department of Transportation work. We have a Secretary of Transportation at Washington. Then we have Federal Railroad Administration. They do all the heavy passenger rail and the freight rail organization. And Federal Transit Administration does all the transit services like buses, light rail, trolley, and subway. And third is the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. They control all the airport authority, air traffic, and safety. And the fourth one is the Maritime Administration, and they control ports and shipping. Finally, National NTSB, they are the people who monitor all the accidents, safety programs, and anything happens, they'll be right there for investigation. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority was formed in 1964. Before that, it was called Pennsylvania Railroad from 1800s. So this authority was formed by the General Assembly of Pennsylvania, connecting with Philadelphia, Montgomery County, Delaware, and Bucks. Over the 56 years, SEPTA has grown as the nation's 6th largest public transportation system. And SEPTA is one of the region's largest employer, more than 10,000 employees working for SEPTA. Next slide. We have a board of directors representing from cities, state, and counties, and from federal government. Our general manager, she oversees the whole operations, and she is in charge for collecting funding. Deputy general managers, there are 2 deputy general managers. One oversees the business division, IT, finance, and administration, and the other one oversees the operations, engineering, infrastructure, and maintenance. Then they have about 6 assistant general managers in each division. Next slide. We have various transportations which we have. We have buses, we have trolleys, we have trackless trolleys, and regional rail is the heavy rail, and light rail is the trolley lines. And also we have ADS systems that for the disabled and also older people. And altogether, our system has different modes of transportation. And we have about more than 1 million people who are taking the system every day. Total yearly passengers are about 337 million. Next slide, please. So our funding comes from federal government, state government, city, and the regional governments. 51% of our funding comes from the state of Pennsylvania, and 36% is from the revenue. 7% is from other counties, and 6% from the federal government. Our capital budget is used for building all stations and buying trains and buses and all the other infrastructure. That is where our 52% comes from the state, and 33% from the federal government, 13% from SEPTA itself, and 2% from the other areas. Next slide. So our value proposition is SEPTA. We can take SEPTA anywhere in this tri-county areas. Next slide. So altogether, we have about $3.43 billion, which is used for the transportation system. And it is connected with the 26,500 jobs, not directly, indirectly connected with that. So it is vital for the economy of Pennsylvania. Next slide. Our infrastructure cost about $1.8 billion, and most of them provides about 7,190 jobs and earnings about $414 million from SEPTA's revenue to spend for the infrastructure. Next slide. So we have created a strategic plan in 2015 to 2019. In that, what we wanted to do is we wanted to innovate into new things, and also integration with the other transit agencies, and also renewal. Our infrastructure was way old, and we wanted to renew all infrastructures one by one, building new stations, reconstructing new bridges, putting tracks, and subway stations. We have new things which is happening. That is why we did 3 parts, like innovation, integration, and renewal. Next slide. Okay, our vision and mission. I'm sorry, I cannot see the slide that well. Some reason or other. Let me switch over to my own slide. In that way I can give you. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, this is vision. Vision of our transportation authority is to provide regions preferred choice for the transportation, and we will earn that choice through connecting the region's integrity, mobility, sustaining our environment, preserving our system for the future generations, committing continuous improvement and innovations. Our mission is SEPTA is dedicated to delivering safe, reliable, sustainable, accessible, customer-focused public transportation. Our core values are our services, our people, and our culture. Next slide, please. So we came up with some benchmarking. Safety and security, financial efficiency, resource and planning, infrastructure, state of the goods repair, as I said, the customer experience, and employee growth. Next slide. So we created the metrics. The metrics are, the first one is the vehicular accident reports to reduce the accidents and also improve the safety for our passengers. So we created a 10,000 miles accident, and we created graphs of, and if you really check at the graphs, you would see the graph, the accident reduction happening in many areas. So next slide. So this is the continuation of the same thing about our safety programs which we install in our departments. Next slide. So this is another safety thing which we do for the carbon emission. We wanted to reduce our carbon emission by 20% by 2021. That is our goal. Unfortunately, in 2020, we had a pandemic. So our buses and the trains and the ADA, we never went out many trips. So that automatically reduced the carbon emission. Next slide. Okay, this is another goal which we set for the sustainability, environmental sustainability. So what we did is we recycle our metals and also plastic and environmental friendly, and also we installed many solar energy products which we installed on our shops so that we can depend more upon the solar energy. Next slide. So these are the metrics which we set. We did many surveys with the customer survey, which gave us a feedback, how we set up the metric so that each 100,000 miles, how the customer satisfaction is made. And we conduct surveys in every 3 months. So service reliability is one of the things which we wanted to collect information from the customers. Communication activity indexes, customer satisfaction survey, and also what are the improvements which we had to make. We get a feedback from the customer service. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, this is something called the mean distance between failures. We collected the information so that we can do better on our transportation systems. So we collect information of the failure rates. So these are our different system and mode. We have Market Frankfurt, we have Broad Street Line, we have City and Trolley, and we see the failure rate. Our goal is in certain areas it is 10,000 mark, and certain areas it is 1,000 mark. So next slide. Our employees are our goal. Actually, it is like the best thing what we give to the employees, that the best thing we can provide, the best service we can provide to our customers. So we have many internal programs which we conducted for our employees. So what we have is there is something called BASIC. That BASIC itself, we get the ideas from the employees, and also we implement those ideas according to their information from the field. Next slide. So this is another metric which we formed to get the passenger trips. How many passenger trips are making and how many more we need, it depends upon the number of passengers. Next slide. This next slide is our infrastructure building. We renew the stations and we build new stations and also buy new trains and new buses. That comes into our program. Next slide. This is one of the metric which we do to collect the information to see how many passengers are using which mode and what are the types of buses which we had to put it out there to get the best transportation system for the people. Next one, next slide. We'll talk to you about the mean difference, distance between the failure again. Next slide. The business initiatives which SEPTA is followed did a big impact between the year 2015 to 2019. SEPTA did grow one of the nation's best transportation authority. And we enjoyed our employment. Our employees are valuable for us. And we gave a good transportation system for the city of Philadelphia.
Mathew,
Next
you
slide.
have 5 minutes left, please.
Thank you. Next slide. Okay, now this one, after 2019, up to 2019, you saw the progress which we did. We did a lot of benchmarking. We collected a lot of information from the customers, and also we collected a lot of information from our own employees. We improved. We did build new stations. We did buy new trolley cars and new buses. We replaced some of our buses with the electric buses. And we are waiting to get our double-decker trains. And also our line is extending to King of Prussia. King of Prussia is the nearest city, which is next project which is coming out. And also we are also planning to have a monorail system eventually. That the talk has been going on for some time. So in 2020, the ridership is declined about 92%. So basically we were not running that good at all. And revenue, a shortfall of 125 million, we couldn't get because of the COVID. Next slide. So what we did is some of the cost reductions because we don't have that income. So we did reduce our the service levels. We eliminated overtime. We instituted a hiring freeze, and we reduced purchases of non-critical services. And also some of the training and advertisements, we stopped doing it and eliminated our business travel to reduce our expenses for the cost for the COVID time. And hopefully in 2021 and 2022 will be a better year. Next slide. Okay, for the whole Philadelphia itself, SEPTA is on one side and the cars are on the other side. We have multimodal systems, which we have bike, we have Lyft, we have Uber, we have all the systems. Everything is moving around in Philadelphia city, and SEPTA is your best choice. So public transportation, we encourage people to take public transportation, and our public transportation cost has been really low. Next slide. These are some of the finished projects which we did. Our stations, 40th Street stations, and Center City concourse, we did that, and also Southern District, we did improvement, and also transportation centers. Some of them we rebuilt, and Woodland Avenue Bridge we replaced. Those are the new infrastructure projects we completed. Next slide. This is a continuation of infrastructure rebuild. One of the substations we replaced in between 2015 to 2020. Next slide. Okay, this is the King of Prussia line I was talking about. This is going to be an extension for Norristown line. It is about 12-mile distance from Philadelphia to King of Prussia. Next slide. So this is one of the stations which we rebuilt recently. Next one. Okay, that is what our system is about, the Transportation Authority in SEPTA. Hopefully in 2022 and 2021, end of 2021, we can do much better. But our 5-year plan which I showed, that it worked real well. And also our innovation department has done a marvelous job. Also our assistant general managers and deputy general managers and general manager did a marvelous job and took this Transportation Authority to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And please give virtual applause to Mr. Tharakan. Thank you for your excellent presentation. Mr. Tharakan has explained to us about the story and profile of SEPTA, Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. He enlightened us with a great impacts generated by SEPTA, which drive the economy of Pennsylvania or Philadelphia. The strategic business plan performed by SEPTA was also well elaborated in detail with Mr. Tharakan presentation. I believe that it will be beneficial as a benchmark for the Greater Jakarta Transportation Authority. Thank you once again, Mr. Tharakan, for your nice presentation. Okay, our next expert is from South Korea. She is currently working at the International Cooperation Team in ITS Korea as General Manager. She joined ITS Korea in 2009 as a member of Organizing Committee of 17th Busan ITS World Congress, co-hosted by ITS Korea, responsible for the program committee. She studied literature at Yonsei University. She studied English literature at Yonsei University in 2003 and obtained a master's degree in urban and transportation engineering from Kongju National University in South Korea. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Shu Park. Shu, time is yours.
Thank you for your introduction. And first of all, very nice to meet you all. And I'm very honored to be here. Actually, I'm not delivering the speech by myself. Instead, I'm going to play the video on solid bus reform on behalf of Professor Go, who was involved and specialized in solid bus reform. Actually, this video was used for the PTDI officials last week when we have workshop with them. But I'm sure this video is worth playing again to show the public transportation status in Korea. After the video playing, I will make some comments. Would you please play the video?
Seoul Bus Reform. I am Professor Jun-ho Ko of Hanyang University in Seoul. It is my great pleasure to make a presentation on the story of bus reform in Seoul. Commenced in July 2004, Seoul's public transportation reform has drastically improved the systems of bus route, fare, and management. It has drawn attention and gained appreciation worldwide from other cities and international organizations. Seoul has had a number of domestic and international visitors coming to Seoul to learn from lessons and knowledge behind a successful transportation reform. The implementation of the 2004 bus reform helped Seoul establish a human-oriented transportation system as shown in the modal split of its public transport, reaching 64.3% in 2010, stepping up the city's transportation and global competitiveness. This presentation is composed of several parts, including Seoul's current transportation situations and the background and achievement of the bus reform. Then, the limitations of the bus reform will be discussed. Finally, the future transportation policy directions will be presented. I would like to emphasize that public transportation services should be carefully managed. This slide shows the vicious cycle of transit services. As you can expect, the increase of income causes the increase of car ownership, resulting in more roadway congestion. This congestion degrades the bus service quality and increases the bus operating costs, requiring a fare raise. Under this situation, car becomes more attractive and bus services will be even more degraded. To break this vicious cycle, measures that set higher priority on buses should be taken. Subsidies should be provided in order for the fare level to be kept affordable for every citizen. These measures will make the bus services faster, reliable, and cheaper compared to private cars. I believe that most cities in the world experienced this vicious cycle in the past or are experiencing it now. Before the bus reform, Seoul's situation is like this. Certainly, the city of Seoul also experienced this vicious cycle, but facing such challenge, Seoul wisely overcome it through bus reform in 2004. These pictures show Seoul's present transportation facets after the bus reform. You can see median bus lanes, bus information system, BIS, traffic operations center, and bus card. This slide shows how Seoul looks like. As a 10 million population city, Seoul manages well its transportation system. With a subway network of more than 300 kilometers and more than 7,000 buses, Seoul achieves about 65% of public transit mode share. About 3 million cars, including 72,000 taxis, are registered. Nowadays, the number of cars registered is stable around 3 million. The Seoul bus reform has elements of bus routing operating systems, infrastructure such as exclusive bus lanes, and supporting systems like integrated fare system. It could be successfully completed through citizens' involvement. The citizen group included civic organizations and experts. To provide financial support for the project, private investments were encouraged to minimize the public financial burden. For example, costs for developing bus information system, 124.9 billion Korean won, and construction of major transfer centers, 5 billion Korean won, including the ones in Yeouido and Changrangri, were entirely sourced from private sector. From the next slide, I will explain these bus reform elements in more detail. The most important change after the bus reform is semi-public operation system, which is an innovative scheme to achieve an adequate level of bus services. In this scheme, government is in charge of operational plan and infrastructure management. Bus companies operate and maintain bus fleets and manages bus drivers. Under the semi-public operation system, joint management of revenue can be combined by introducing transportation card and a company that handles pooling and allocating the fare box revenue. A well-designed bus fare system is also very important. In case of Seoul, transit fare is calculated based on only traveled distance, regardless of the number of transfers between buses and subways. This is quite convenient and economically beneficial to passengers. Bus route was reorganized as a feeder and branch system. This new system was introduced to provide direct services between major activity locations, which was expected to reduce travel times for most passengers. However, it requires more transfers. The integrated fare system and bus information system have some roles to relieve the inconvenient transfers. Adopting the feeder and branch system, color-coded buses were introduced for an easy recognition of the new bus functions. For example, red buses travel long distances from suburban areas to the central areas of Seoul. Meanwhile, green buses cover short distances, often from residential areas to subway stations. Exclusive medium bus lanes are also important for improving bus services, in particular in terms of bus speed and reliability. More and more bus lanes are being planned for major roadways in Seoul. Bus systems can be efficiently managed by applying technology. For the scientific bus operations and management, buses were equipped with GPS devices. With the help from the GPS, buses could be monitored on a real-time basis and their locational information was conveyed to passengers through Bus Information Systems, or BIS. Bus companies could also utilize the information for a better bus fleet management. The Transportation Management Center, called Seoul TOPUS, has a role of collecting, processing the data, and provides the processed data to passengers via BIS, website, and smartphones. Now, we need to understand why the bus reform was implemented at that time. Just before the bus reform, Seoul's population had doubled over the past 30 years, and vehicle population had increased by 46 times over the same period. Accordingly, traffic volume increased and travel speed decreased. A record indicated that the travel speed in downtown area was only 16 kilometers per hour. This situation, together with higher car ownership, lowered the competitiveness of buses, and bus industry had a hard time managing their business due to the worse profitability. Due to the decreased profitability, some bus companies should give up their business. This resulted in the reduced number of bus companies by half. The city bus driver's salary was lowest compared to other bus drivers. Accordingly, bus drivers were not satisfied with their job and were often unkind to passengers. They should have more passengers by aggressively driving to the next bus stops. They often urged passengers to get on the bus quickly to save boarding times. Illegally parked cars in the curbside lanes played as a barrier to bus flows, and traffic congestion lowered bus speed, making punctual bus operations even more difficult. Consequently, bus companies expressed their desire to cut bus services by 30% as a way to reduce operating costs. Before the bus reform, a survey was conducted to explore citizens' opinions about bus services. 2 major complaints were identified: irregular bus arrival times and aggressive driving. Other complaints were also noted: passing without stopping at bus stops and bus drivers' rudeness. This survey clearly showed the direction of how the bus services should be improved. This slide shows the timeline of the bus reform. The intent to reform was announced 2 years before the launch of bus reform. Right after that, Seoul Public Transportation Task Force was organized by the Seoul Metropolitan Government, SMG. A pilot project was conducted, but suspended soon due to oppositions from stakeholders, in particular bus companies. After the unsuccessful Northeast Area pilot project, SMG formed Bus Reform Civic Committee to encourage active civic participation after gathering citizens' opinion on the delay in the reform process. Established in August 2003, the committee, made up of 4 members from civil organizations, 3 from bus companies, 8 from transport-related academics, and 5 from city council and other related entities, was an independent organization that included the most important of interested parties in the bus reform. Through discussions, SMG devised measures to restructure the bus routes with citizens' convenience and financial stability of bus companies in mind. Only 6 months before the bus reform, Seoul Metropolitan Government reached an agreement on the joint revenue management with bus companies. Finally, the reform was launched in July 2004, but the radical changes did not work properly in the beginning. The new bus routes were confusing to citizens, and transportation card was sometimes out of control. 3 days after the bus reform, the mayor released public apology for unsatisfactory arrangements. Upgrades of the reform, including policy revisions, continued to stabilize the operation. Ahead of July 2004 reform, Seoul's Transport Authority had sought to implement a pilot project in the northeast region of Seoul to handle prospective congestion following the removal of the Cheonggae elevated highway. However, the ambitious attempt did not take off because of opposition, particularly from bus companies. SMG realized that stakeholders' agreement is a key to the success of the bus reform. It took about 1 year for the reform to fully resume after conducting negotiations with stakeholders. This slide shows what kind of conflicts and disapprovals from the stakeholders were raised. For example, bus companies claimed that their property right could be infringed by the SMG's adjustment of bus routes. At that time, bus companies considered the bus route as their patent. Bus drivers concerned about their job security, being anxious over unemployment from proposed route adjustment and less buses in operation. Police agency claimed an issue of unsafety by median bus lanes and raised concerns about subsequent complaints from citizens. Clearly, most stakeholders expressed their preference to the current system. Under this situation, SMG made persistent efforts to come to agreements with interested parties. During negotiations with bus companies, it held workshops with representatives from bus companies, academics, and local officials. Measures taken in the negotiation process also included official letters to 16,000 bus drivers to make a case for the bus reform and 27 special training sessions for drivers. Finally, SMG settled an agreement through the cooperation with Police Agency, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Incheon city government, and urban railway operators. The bus reform required the revision of legal system. After long and intensive discussions with central government officials, Passenger Automobile Operation Business Act was revised to secure legal ground for the joint management of revenues, a key part of the quasi-public operation system. As for some of the contested routes, it was decided to limit the validity of operation license for each operator up to 6 years, along with the introduction of route bidding system. To stabilize the management of bus companies, subsidies provided by SMG to bus companies were stipulated in an ordinance of SMG. The integrated fare system was gradually expanded to the entire capital area. Neighboring cities' metro operators concerned about the impact on the profitability caused by the new integrated fare system. So they were reluctant to agree to participate in the new fare system. However, SMG's efforts finally persuaded them to join in the new system, and citizens could enjoy the full integrated system. It took 5 years for the expansion.
Okay, actually, due to the time limit, from now on, I'm going to add some comments on that. Actually, let me explain what changes this reform brought about to Seoul transportation system. With the implementation of quasi-public, which is the semi-public system, the city bus network has transformed to a passenger-oriented mode of transport that offers stable and pleasant bus travel environment. The semi-public system means that, through the semi-public system, the private bus companies can get subsidy from the Seoul government. It raised city bus drivers' salary, and job security was improved a lot. And also, the introduction of transportation cards allows scientific management of public transport as well. Currently, the transportation card usage in Seoul is almost 98%. Another key element is bus information system. Bus information system is providing real-time bus arrival time at the bus station or a smartphone or a website. So now the bus information collection rates improved to, the accuracy rate is almost 97%. So now many of citizens are satisfied with this BIS system. So generally, the bus speed of ordinary route, bus speed is improved by 30%. And for the median lane, I mean BRT lane, the bus speed is increased by 80%. So which is a lot. So I mean, through this type of, the speed improvement, bus can operate punctually. That improves the bus services convenience a lot. And so as you're concluding, I'd like to emphasize that the policy divisions based on the agreement among citizens and researchers and bus companies and all the related stakeholders made a framework for the transport reform. And so in short, suitable policy revision and active application of technology such as BIS, transportation card, and BRT implementation, and also drawing consensus among officials, citizens, experts are very crucial factors for the successful reform done in Seoul. So actually, at this moment, Indonesia and Korea has been actively cooperating each other. And actually, I'd like to take this opportunity to appreciate all the officials from PPTJ, and also especially to Mr. Sugihardjo and Elise Inaga to support our BIMS project as well. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Supark, Miss Yu,
Yeah.
for your presentation. Please give applause to Miss Yu. I think that what we can learn from Miss Yu's presentation is how the Seoul's initiative to create a human-oriented public transportation system has been carried out ferociously. Also, to be noted is that the reform scheme that leads to several substantial achievements. However, in its implementation, the reform encountered several obstacles and also limitations, which have also been well explained by Ms. Yu. Once again, thank you very much, Shu, for your extraordinary presentation. Just for your reminder to ask question, please put your question to the Q&A box with the particular format. Type your name, space, question, space to whom the question is directed. So for all participants, if you have questions, just put your question to the Q&A box with the particular format. Type your name, space, question, space, and to whom the question is directed. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this webinar is getting more interesting as we are about to present our third speaker, an international expert. He's from Japan, has a long professional career in Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. He's currently working as Special Representative for International Affairs, MLIT, Japan. Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro, please welcome. You have 20 minutes for your active presentation, and I will remind you in the last 5 minutes. Thank you. Time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me? Can you hear my voice?
Yes, your voice is so clear.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So first of all, I would like to thank all the parties concerned for the presentation for this important web seminar. And I'm very honored to participate in today's discussion. So could you please show my presentation item? I prepared the PowerPoint material. anyone prepare my document on the screen, please?
Committee, please assist Mr. Yamakoshi to share the presentation. Please, committee.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next page, please. Please move on to the next one, please. Thank you. These are the main topics of my presentation. And today's information are mainly on railway as public transport, but buses are similar under the similar framework. So today, first I will touch upon the railway system. Please go on to the next page. Thank you. The first topic is about the Japanese legal system on public transport business. As the sole entity of the national government on transport, the MLIT is responsible for the policy of public transport, including buses and railways. This slide shows the legal system of the railway business in Japan. The railway business in Japan is subject to the permission or the license issued by the MLIT. You can see that the MLIT acts as the regulator by this slide. For example, the ministry sets the legal system on railway business. The ministry issues permission if the applicants meet the necessary conditions or requirements determined by the related statutes. After the issuance of the license, the MLIT responsible for the supervision of their appropriate business operation. And especially safety is a must, critically important to transport business. So it inspects the operators without prior notice, periodically or when necessary. And this is a broad outline of how the public transport business is governed in Japan. And as I said, the legal system on bus and taxi businesses is basically the same in its framework. The MLIT gives a business license to operators based on the statutes, and the business operators run their businesses observing the requirements of the legal statutes. Next page, please. As to business operators, in the case of railways, there are several categories. Simply put, now the operators are all considered to be private entities. As to the first one, in Japan, there used to be a national railway operator called the Japan National Railways. Since the business management was very inefficient, in 1987, it was privatized and divided into 7 regional railway companies. The second category is private railway business companies. They were purely privately found. In Japan, they are unique in its commencement of railway business, in that the railway operation was combined with city development. And the third is metro companies. In Japan, there are several metro operators. They are all a part of the municipalities. They are owned and operated by the local governments. And the fourth is a kind of the mixture of public and private operation. Next page, please. As I referred to in the previous slide, before 1950s, the private railway companies constructed railways themselves by their own funds and finances. It was possible, for one thing, at the time in Japan, it was before motorization, which means railways dominated all local transport in the territory. And for another thing, land acquisition was relatively much easier before the coming of the mass urbanization. On the part of the private railway companies, they developed housing and commercial facilities, such as a department store, along their railway lines. As a result, more and more residents came to use the railways. Next, please. After 1960s, Japanese economy began to grow bigger at a rapid speed. The number of commuters who used railways increased with the increase of the number of workers and students in great urban cities. However, private railway operators faced difficulty in increasing transport capacity because they could not afford the high cost for expansion of the capacity. That is the reason why the Japanese government began financial support to private railway companies. Next, please. The government provided various financial support for the purpose of increase of transport capacity. The target was the construction of new lines, the extension of the existing lines, and the increase of the number of tracks, which means double tracks. The example of the financial supports are listed on this slide. Next, please. This slide shows an example of financial support for the construction of new lines. It is a subsidy for the construction of subway to be operated by local governments. The central government and the municipalities provide subsidies at the rates of the percentage written on the side respectively. For example, the central government provides 25% of the construction cost and local government 28%. And the amount of the subsidy is more than a half of the construction cost. And the rest of the construction cost is provided as investments by the local governments and the loans by the commercial banks. Next, please. And with the aspect of the policy of public transport, the development of urban railways has been implemented based on the master plans. This master plan is made by the Transportation Policy Council, a statutory organization, through the consultation and the agreement among the local governments and the private railway companies. This council first drafted the plan in 1956, and then it revised the plan considering the change of the social situation like high economic growth or the concentration of the population. The latest one was made in 2000. The plan set the target year as 2015. The actual development of railways is implemented based on the Railway Business Act, in most cases with financial support by the central government and the local governments. Next, please. And this slide shows the route map in the master plan in 2000. The routes in orange were supposed to begin its operation by 2015. The routes in yellow were supposed to begin construction by 2015. And the routes in green were planned to continue considering the construction. Next, please. Yes, and this slide shows the actual, next slide, please. Yes, this shows the actual progress. As for the routes which were supposed to begin its operation, the routes in blue actually began its operation by 2015, while the routes in red have not begun operation. But the in total, the 80% of the routes that were supposed to begin operation by 2015 has already been in operation. And these days, the Narita Sky Access Line listed on the upper side in picture started operation in July 2010. It takes only 36 minutes from the center of Tokyo to the Narita International Airport. Next, please. This graph shows the average congestion rates during the peak hours of the railways in metropolitan Tokyo. The congestion rates show the rates of the number of passengers to the transport capacity. The target of the government is 150%, and the ratio is coming to the target. It is a result of the improvement of transport capacity by the construction of new lines and the increase of the number of the railway tracks. Next, please. As a result, the development of major urban railway networks as public transport has almost been completed. The congestion of trains during the peak hours is mitigated greatly. And as a result, since 2000, the measures to improve the convenience of railways based on the existing infrastructure has been implemented. Next, please. This is the overview of the measures to enhance convenience in the existing urban railway infrastructure. The measures covered by the project are given 1/3 of the development cost as subsidies. Moreover, tax deduction can apply to constructed facilities based on this project. Next, please. These are some examples of the projects covered by the financial support. In Japan, we promote installation of barrier-free facilities so that the elderly and the physically handicapped can use the railway transport with no difficulty. For example, we promote the installation of elevators, platform doors, toilets for wheelchair users, yellow guiding blocks, and so on. It costs much to install the elevator and the platform doors in the existing railway facilities. The central governments and the local governments promote these kinds of facilities by providing financial supports.
Mr. Yamakoshi, 5
Yes.
minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Next, please. This is an example of the facilitation of the use of the railway stations. On the left picture, this building covers the plural modes of transport which specifically the second floor is for railway station. The third floor is for bus terminal. And fourth floor is for taxi stop and parking area. And we call these integrated stations multimodal station. And these kinds of stations can provide high quality passenger services and have been developed as regional hubs. Next, please. And the railway companies make efforts to improve their passenger customer experiences at railway stations. At the major railway stations, their structure and layout have been rearranged for more smooth transfer. There are various shops and services inside the station in order to make stations more attractive to passengers and customers. Next, please. This shows the IC card system in Japan. Passengers can take a bus, a taxi, and a train, and also buy items with one IC card, which improves the convenience of the passengers in the field of public transport. Next, please. In conclusion, I would like to sum up today's presentation in this way. In Japan, the National Transport Authority is the MLIT. It acts as a policymaker and as the sole regulator. And it is responsible for safety and appropriate management of the ordinary business operators. And the government also support the financially. First, it was for the purpose of construction. And recently, it aims at enhancing the convenience of passengers. And as to the promotion of the use of public transportation, we aims at the enhancing the convenience of passengers and users. And as to today's presentation, we are inclined to the railway business, but we are also very willing and able to collect and give information to the government of Indonesia wherever necessary. So we would like to continue to discuss these matters between two of our countries as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please give a virtual applause to Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro for the extraordinary presentation. I think Indonesia can learn a thing or two from our colleague, Japan, Mr. Toshihiro. Mr. Toshihiro gave details on the governance of public transportation in Japan, especially for bus and railway. Then he also depicted how Japan encourage people to use public transportation through several promotional scenario. Thank you, Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro. To all participants, just for your reminder to ask question, please put your question to the question and answer box with the particular format. Type your name, space, question, space, to whom the question is directed. Once again, to ask questions, please put your name, please put your question to the Q&A box with the particular format. Type your name, space, question, space, and to whom the question is directed. Now we are going to present our fourth speaker. He is associate professor at the Paris School of Urban Planning, University Paris East, hold a doctorate in urban planning and studies from the University of Paris West Nanterre. He is currently in the position of Attaché for higher education and for social and human sciences at the French Embassy in China, in Beijing. For more than 25 years, he has been focusing his research and teaching on the transport policy making in different cultural and political contexts. His main field of interest has always been fast-growing Chinese cities. Please welcome Mr. Jean-François Doulet. Monsieur Doulet, s'il vous plaît, time is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to be part of this very interesting webinar on the comparative approach of local transportation authorities. And I would like to thank more specifically Hananto for friendly, in a very friendly way, inviting me to be part of this interesting event. Hananto is got a PhD degree from our university in Paris, so he's one of our alumni. I'm very happy to see him again. So if you don't mind, I will share my presentation from my computer. Here it is. So I will try to explain in a very dense but simple way, I hope, the Île-de-France Mobility, which is the transport regulatory body for the Greater Paris area. You know that Paris has one of the oldest rail transit system in the world, and I think the city and the Greater Paris area is very proud of having this very efficient urban transportation system. So I would like to.
Pardon, Monsieur Doulet.
Yes?
Your voice is too low. Can you give the power to your voice?
Okay. Maybe it's a problem of microphone. So I will try to speak a bit louder, and hopefully it will also awake some of our people in the audience. It's very late here in Asia. So I will try to look into 5 main characteristics of this very specific transportation authority, as we are in a webinar dedicated on a comparative approach to transportation public systems. So 5 main characteristics, and I think that those 5 main characteristics make the public transport regulatory body of the Paris regional area very specific. So let's start by the perimeter. So Île-de-France Mobilité, which is the regulatory body for transportation policy for the Greater Paris area, actually implement its policies on a specific area. This area is called the Urban Transport Perimeter, PTU, PTU in French. And what is interesting is that from the 80s on, in the process of decentralization in France, local authorities and regional authorities have tried to adjust to rescale the urban transport perimeter to the reality and the characteristics of the metropolitan area of Paris. So 2 consequences. The first consequence is that the geographic perimeter for implementing transport policies was adjusted to the functional reality of the Paris metropolitan area, which we call in France the aire urbaine. So Île-de-France Mobility, the public transport authority, today addresses the needs of a comprehensive and coherent territory when considering regional mobility behavior. This is the first consequence. The second consequence is that the perimeter was adjusted to the administrative area of the political body of the Greater Paris region, which is a local political and administrative entity, la région Île-de-France. So Île-de-France Mobility plans mobility solutions in the framework of a strong and comprehensive political body. It's embedded in this regional political body. In conclusion, designing transport policies have been made easier and more efficient over the years. This is the map showing in green what we call the urban area. The urban area is an area. This is a functional area based on the reality of daily mobility. So it means that in this green, in this orange area, people, almost half of the people have daily connections to the city center when it comes to access to jobs, when it comes to daily commute. So and the line in the dark line, the line in black, is the limit, the administrative limit of the Paris region, the Île-de-France region, the political administrative body. And the very small gray area in the very center of the map is the Paris city itself. So it's about, the Paris region is about 12,000 square kilometers, and the total population is around 11 million. So what we can see when rescaling the urban transport perimeter to the administrative perimeter of the Greater Paris region political body, is that the transportation authority is more in capability to develop proper solutions with a strong political support on one side and on a very coherent territory on the other side when it comes to understand daily mobility needs. Second key characteristic, the shift from transport-centered strategy to a mobility-centered strategy. So what we call in social sciences, the mobility shift. So what you can say that the former transport authority that preceded Île-de-France Mobilité were created to overlook and support the building of a new public transportation infrastructure. They were called AOT for authorities in charge of organizing transportation solutions. In the first stage of the Greater Paris, transport public policies, meaning up to the 80s, from the 70s to the 80s, more or less, the main objective was to accelerate the creation of a regional rail transport system. They were many focused on the transportation system itself. In the second stage, in the 90s and up to now, Île-de-France Mobilité has aimed at becoming the master organizer of different transportation solutions. And now it has been called AOM. So it went from T, the letter T, to the letter M. M for mobility. So this Île-de-France Mobilité, the Greater Paris region urban transport authority body, went from being only in charge of transportation to being in charge of mobility. So not only conventional public transportation modes, but also mobility services, meaning car sharing, carpooling, and public bikes. So in conclusion, you can say that over the years, over the decades, local transportation strategy went from supporting transportation supply to regulating mobility demand. So when I say over the decades, it starts in the 70s, early 70s. So this is an image that shows how Île-de-France Mobilité has over the years extended its mission in a very transmodal way, and from public transport per se to a wide range of mobility services, including what we see in front of us in the first, at the center of the image, this Pass Navigo, which is a unique, one only transportation fare, one only a monthly path that allow anyone to travel all over the Greater Paris region. using different type of transportation mode or mobility services. Third characteristic, the overall objectives of the local transportation policies. So in the second stage that we described earlier, meaning from the 90s on, in the second stage of the Greater Paris Transportation Strategy, policies target environmental goals more than transport or transportation efficiency. This started with the implementation of what we call the law in 1995. And since this environment-oriented law, the Integrated Transport Strategic Plan, what we call the PDUF, the Master Plan for Mobility and Transportation in the Greater Paris region, had to monitor top key environmental indicators, mainly the emission of greenhouse gases. To do so, this planning tool, this master plan in terms of mobility and transportation, had to comply with the regional energy consumption plan and the urban development plan. As a consequence, transportation policies have become more intersectoral. And we have to say also that the reduction of car use, this is true all over the world, and the reduction of car use has then become the actual point of a trend of the local transportation strategy. Fourth characteristic, the nature of the contract between Île-de-France Mobilité, the mobility regulatory body, and the transportation operators. And one of the key concepts behind this contractual scheme is quality of service. And there is also another very interesting concept, the public service concession. When we go back to history, when they emerged in the early 1980s, French local transport policies were conceived under the central concept of right to transport. In France, local transport is a public service that can't be left in the hands of the market. As a consequence, Île-de-France Mobilité is the public body that has to secure this public service when it deals with transport and mobility operators. Transport and mobility operators sign a contract with Île-de-France Mobilité that puts them under the obligation of following constraining operation conditions. However, and things are evolving, few operators are working in line with the model of a public service concession per se that is found in most French cities, as most of the contracts still right now are negotiating between Île-de-France Mobilité and the transportation operators. But the trend is to open the urban public transportation sector to competition. So we will enter a new phase where public service concession will be open to public offers and public bids. The overall philosophy is that anyone should be able to access efficient and affordable mobility solutions in his daily mobility. And here are the logos of the three main transportation operators in the Greater Paris region area. The three main operators have a contract with Île-de-France Mobilité. On the left, RATP, which is the historical operator that deals mainly with the subway network and with buses within the city of Paris. Transilien SNCF, the logo in the center. Transilien is the regional subsidiary company of SNCF. SNCF is our national railway company. And the last logo is Optil. Optil is it's an association of almost 80 bus transportation operators, mainly in the fringes of the Paris area. and all those operators, once again, have a contract with the Île-de-France Mobilité and has to comply with this notion of quality of service. And most of their losses are compensated by what we can call public subsidies given by Île-de-France Mobilité. Last characteristic when it comes to financing, the main, the key specific element of the financing scheme of public transport in the Paris region area, but this is true for France as a whole, is what we call the versement transport. Let me explain it a little bit. So in the early 1970s, the Greater Paris region was the first to test a new financial scheme for public transport, which is called the versement transport. This versement transport, which is a local tax, has then become a unique financial scheme in the world, and almost 40% of the Île-de-France Mobility budget come from local taxes levied on gross total payroll of companies and public institutions with 11 employees or more. In addition to commercial revenue and public subsidies, this local tax, the versement transport, VT, has genuinely boosted the capabilities of local transportation policies. This VT has been renamed VM, Versement Mobilité, since the beginning of this year, as the scope of local policies have extended towards mobility services. So once again, we went from the T letter to the M letter, expressing what we usually call the mobility shift in the field of transportation, the analysis of transportation policies.
Monsieur Doulet, 5 minutes left.
So, this is my last slide. So, so it is in French. So what we can see is that the total budget is about 10 billion euros. And you can see that versement transport on the top part of the slide, the versement transport in the middle of the top part of the slide represents a very large amount of the sources of revenue of Île-de-France Mobilité, and those taxes levied on the private sector is still very active, still very vivid, and this is a very French specificity, meaning that it has always been acknowledged as a very innovative financial scheme, but never in the world this scheme has been reproduced, has been duplicated. Thank you very much. If you have, of course, questions, I would be very happy to answer to those questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monsieur Doulet. From Monsieur Doulet's presentation, we can understand the transformation of the Greater Paris Transportation Authority, Île-de-France Mobilité, environmental policies, which are the main principles of the regulatory body, were also pointed. Lastly, Monsieur Doulet disclosed a concession model that must meet certain provisions as well as the creative funding to give us a better understanding of Île-de-France Mobilité. Thank you very much. Please give virtual applause to Monsieur Doulet for the presentation. Just for your reminder to all participants to ask questions, please put your question to the Q&A box with the particular format. Type your name, space, question, space, and to whom the question is directed. Our speakers will answer all of questions after the presentation time finish. Okay, I hope that your cup is not too full yet. Just after delightful insight from our speakers and expert, we still have one Indonesian expert as today's speaker. He will give us even more insight from an expert's point of view. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bambang Prihartono. He has a long career as government official in National Planning Agency and Ministry of Transportation of Indonesia. He was the former Director General of Greater Jakarta Transportation Authority, or BPTG. And currently, Pak Bambang, Mr. Bambang, works as the Special Advisor to the Chief of Staff for Infrastructure, Energy and Investment, Presidential Staff Office, Indonesia. Pak Bambang obtained master degree in transportation system from Carnegie Mellon University, Pittsburgh, USA. Pak Bambang, time is yours. Silakan Pak Bambang.
Thank you, Pak Hananto. Can you hear me, Pak Hananto?
Your voice is yes, your voice is clear.
Okay, good. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished Minister of Transportation, Pak Budi Karya, distinguished Pak Sugihardjo, distinguished speakers accompany with us tonight in the morning from USA time, and also distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning and very good evening, ya Pak Hananto ya. Yes, maybe you have heard from Pak Minister that Pak Minister explained to you that now in Indonesia, especially in Jakarta, we have a transport authority. Transport authority has been set up since 2015, and now not only we have the transport authority, but also we have the master plan for the Greater Jakarta. Now maybe let me explain a little bit about the Greater Jakarta. You know that the Greater Jakarta consists of 9 district area and also 3 provinces. We call it a agglomeration city. So in Jakarta, in Indonesia, I mean that there are 6 agglomeration city. One is located in Medan City, is located in North Sumatra, and then Greater Jakarta itself. And then the third one is Bandung, is located in West Java. And also the fourth one is Surabaya City, is located in East Java. And the 5th one is Makassar City, is located in South Sulawesi. And also Denpasar City is located in Denpasar Island, or Bali Island. And also the next coming agglomeration city, maybe we consider the Semarang. Semarang City is located in central of Java. And maybe also the next agglomeration city is Yogyakarta, is located in Yogyakarta area. So you know that if we are talking about the Greater Jakarta, so you know there are other cities has the same problem. You know why the Greater Jakarta become more important? Because you know that they're very, very complicated, yeah. Because Greater Jakarta is located in 3 provinces, yeah. Province Jakarta itself, and then Banten province, and also West Java. You know that the Greater Jakarta is considered as the same level of the big city in the world, you know. For example, maybe I will ask François. By Jean, what is the population of Paris? Pak Zain, you can hear me?
Monsieur Doulet, do you have any idea how many population in Greater Paris?
Yes, in Greater Paris. What is the population in Greater Paris?
I already said it. It's about 11 million.
11 million,
yeah. 11 million, yeah. How about Seoul? Busu Park. What is the population of Busu Park in Seoul?
It's 10 million.
10 million.
10 million.
So, please guess what is the population in Jakarta, Greater Jakarta? Pak Jin, would you guess what is the population in Greater Jakarta? Just guess, just guess.
Monsieur Doulet, can you guess the population in Jakarta? Just guess. Just give a number. Can you define it?
I would say the double. 20
double?
million. 20 million.
20 million. So The right one is the population in Greater Jakarta achieved 33 million people. So you can see the Greater Jakarta is considered as an international cities like New York, like London, So I think the population, interpopulation greater than Paris and also greater than Seoul, ya Bu Supak ya. So nowadays the people movement per day in Greater Jakarta achieve 80 million people movement per day. So you can imagine the people movement far greater, much greater than the population itself. That's why this is our challenge, how to develop mass transportation in Greater Jakarta. Everybody here mostly prefer driving by private car, So you can see in Jakarta a big problem with the traffic congestion. You know that I think in my minister of transportation announced that now we have the transport authority. That's why tonight I will explain to you why we need the transport authority in Greater Jakarta. Okay, slide please. The first one is the outline of my presentation is maybe we can the next please, Adit. Okay then. What is the ideal condition that we are going to achieve? Of course, you know that now we have no choice. We have to develop the public transportation, And then after that, after we set up the ideal condition, now we are going to know what is actually the existing condition in Greater Jakarta. And then what is the problem is facing right now. And then the end of our presentation is what is the solution actually. The next, please. The ideal condition. The ideal condition, what we are going to do is, the first is, what is the easier for the accessibilities, the easier to get the public transport, the easier to get the public transport, and then the easier to connect between one mode of transportation to another mode of transportation. That's the ideal condition that we are going to achieve. And the second one, it is a matter of time. Of course, the ideal condition is we have to provide the faster mass transportation or public transportation. And also not only faster, but I think the safety more important, especially for the lady one, And then also, that it's easier for the people, for the fair mass transportation, and also for the people, for the people. So, and in this case, of course, the people is interesting to get or to find or to go everywhere by the public transportation. The next slide, please. Now, this is the ideal condition, The ideal condition that, slide, please. Next, please. Okay, this is the existing condition. Most people in the Greater Jakarta is going to go everywhere by the private car. And you know that we have a lack of a mass of public transportation. This cause traffic jam is always happen in Greater Jakarta. We calculate the economic losses due to congestion achieve around 65 trillion rupiah per year. Now, this is the real condition that we are facing right now. We have a good case here. For example, that there is a central area in Greater Jakarta. We call that Duku Atas, in here that in Jakarta, we have trying to build the mass transportation here. We have the commuter line, we have also the MRT, but there is no a good connection, the integration between among of transportation. The integration between MRT and commuter line, between commuter line and busway. So it is our homework how to integrate among the mass public transportation in Greater Jakarta. Next, please. Now the problem actually not the problem. I don't like to say about the problem. Maybe it's better for me to say the challenge. What is the challenge? Now the challenge is the first one in urban mobility. Then in the urban mobility, we have several modes of transportation. We have a bus feeder, we have a car, we have a motorcycle, and also we have a non-motile. There's a mode of transportation in Greater Jakarta. And also we have several operators to operate is a mode of transportation. For example, in Greater Jakarta again, there is a Jack Linko who operated the bus rapid transit. And also we have a public transportation in smaller one. Yeah, we call it here Hangkot. This small transportation. And also we have taxi, and also we have a motorbike to carry the passengers. And also in terms of owner, yeah, in owner, of course, we have organization for the public transport. We call the Organda, and also the owner, there is an individual. So you can see in terms of mode of transportation operator and owner is a very, very complicated and very, very various. And also the responsibility in level organization. Yeah, most of the most transportation is become of a national responsibility. For example, this a commuter line, there's national responsibility. But also we have a lower level, like a professor level. This professor level has a responsibility for example, for the LRT, some LRT, and also Transjakarta. There's a professional level responsibility. And also we have a city level responsibility. So you can imagine that in terms of mode transportation, there are several mode operator and owner. And also in terms of responsibility, there is a central government and provincial level and also city level. Next. Next, please. Now, how about the integration? Now, if we are talking about the integration, there are two things that we have to know. The first one is the physical integration. What we have right now, we have success of build the BRT, and we have succeed build MRT phase 1, and now we are working to build the LRT, and some have already operated. But this mass transportation doesn't integrated is in one. For example, between MRT and commuter line, there is no integration between that one. And also one MRT to another MRT. So physical integration become important, so people easy move from other mode of transportation to another mode of transportation. Now, what is another integration? The payment integration. Yeah. Until now, we don't have any payment integration right now. If we are going to go by MRT, we have a special ticket for the MRT. And then after we tap out from the MRT and go to the busway, so we have a special ticket for the busway. So there is no integration between in payment from one mode of transportation to another mode of transportation. Next, please. Now you can see in my presentation, because people now is easy to go everywhere by private car. Now the cheapest one is a motorbike. That's why you can see in my presentation, the motorbike increase exponential. Rather than compare with other mode of transportation. Bus transportation growth left relatively flat. So that's why this is our challenge, And you can see also the share of public transportation in 2010 only 2%. Only 2%. Before that, the share of public transportation may be around 10%. Now decreasing. Now in 2010 only 2%. That's why everybody now prefer using the private car.
A minute left, Pak Bambang.
Okay then. Next about the congestion. About the congestion now, because traffic congestion now we achieve 5 billion per year. That's our challenge also now. Now next is now we learn from success story for other cities like New York State. How New York State solve the problem about the traffic congestion, how to develop the public transportation. And also we learn from the Singapore, how today develop the mass transportation. Now what is the solution? The solution is we have to integrate, to integrate in physical one and also in terms of payment, So that's why how to integrate one, we need a decision. And then we have a state property asset, and also we need a budget to develop the infrastructure, and also we need the master plan. Next. Next, please. Yeah, now what Minister mentioned that now we have a transport authority, and this is regulation by President Decree. The transport authority should be powerful because they integrate and also the manage and also to coordinate among the level of institution like central government, local government, and also the city level. Next. Okay, this is the strategic role of the Jabodetabek or this transport authority. We have 9 districts. And also we have 3 provinces. We have to coordinate. The transport authority should coordinate 9 districts and 3 provinces. Next, please. Yeah, this is the function of the transport authority. The first one is coordinate and synchronization become content, and then policy, regulatory planning and function, and also functional and technical facilitation. And also police enforcement and function should be in terms of about the licensing, public, monitoring and evaluation, and correction and selection. And now the last one is a national strategic function. Next, please. Yes, this is the President Decree for the master plan. We have the transport authority, now we have a master plan. And master plan also has a degree, the President Decree number 55. So the transportation is doing to do the solve the problem of the transportation because they have the master plan itself. Next. The question is enough if we have the transport authority and we have a master plan? I say we have to actualize. Why is that? Because the transportation authority right now should be more powerful. So we propose 3 options. The first option is we have to revise the presidential instruction. the transport authority should be below the president. Right now, the transport authority below the minister. And the second option is the allocation budget function of budgeting. So we have to allocate the budget enough for the transport authority in doing the implementing of the master plan. And the last one is the corporate action, mean that the transport authority in the future, like state-owned enterprise, yeah, they doing a business in transportation. So if you ask me, what is the option should be preferred? I think I choose the last one, the option 3. Thank you. That's all my presentation. Thanks a lot. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Pak Bambang. Please give virtual applause to Pak Bambang Prihartono for the useful insight, especially about what should we do next in coordinating sectors and region in Greater Jakarta. More specifically, Pak Bambang Prihartono also emphasized that the Greater Jakarta Transport Authority must be able to integrate the institutions, assets, budget, and also master plan intersector to create a sustainable urban transportation system. Thank you very much for your extraordinary presentation, Pak Bambang. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is the moment for other participants to be involved because we are entering the question and answer sessions. Before we proceed, I want to say hello to our participants, whether in Zoom and watching in YouTube, Land Transportation Academy. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you will stay until the end of our webinar. This is the most awaited webinar on the earth. And on behalf of the organizing committee, we apologize in advance if your question cannot be read because the amount of the question against our time limit. Okay, committee, please. Now I'm going to read the question. Please prepare the question. And now I would read the question that came in and has been curated by the committee, the organizing committee from Land Transportation Academy or Land Transportation Polytechnic. The first question is from committee. Please, the question. The first question is from Handa Lesmana from DGLT, Directorate General Land Transportation, MOT Indonesia, Ministry of Transportation of Indonesia, to my colleague Mathew. The question is how Transport Authority deal with decreasing number of passengers of public transport due to COVID-19 pandemic in terms of operational costs. Mathew, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. And as you know, last 1 year, the whole of 2020 and also the beginning of 2021, we are hit with the pandemic. And our ridership went down about 92%. So we didn't have many riders. But we never fired any employees or laid off any employees. All the employee level we kept. We got some funding from the federal government to do our operations. We got about $600 million for our first 6 months of operations. So we pulled on with that. And also our trains and buses, we made sure that we clean properly, we disinfect properly so that people can travel comfortably and safely. So those are the precautions we did. It was hard for us to manage, but we managed, and we are going through. The ridership seems to be an increase in the last month, and we hope we will get all the riders back.
Is that okay? You're finished your answer?
Yes, sir. Anything else you want to know? I can.
Okay. We are moving to the second question. Thank you very much, Mathew, for your answer to Mr. Handa Lesmana questions. Now we are moving to the second question. Please, committee. Would you share the question from the second? Yeah. From Eli Sinaga, from IRSP to Shupak. Shu, the question from Ibu Eli is, it is mentioned that incredible modal share to 65% of public transport reached by a huge subsidy from the government. My questions, first, can you tell us how the sustainable financing system managed in South Korea? Second, it also mentioned that South Korea can maintain the number of car ownership in 3 million. What kind of policy created behind this? And last question is ongoing ODA. I don't know what ODA grants project now conducted from South Korea to Indonesia. One of it to build a BIMS, Bus Information Management System in Jabodetabek or Greater Jakarta. How much do you think it will shift to the car riders to the public transport in Jabodetabek or Greater Jakarta? Shu, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for the questions. Yeah, it's long questions. Actually, about the first questions, I think, especially Seoul metropolitan government, the public transportation is regarded as like public SOC, public infrastructure. So Seoul metropolitan government think that, if many people are using private cars, so it caused a lot of traffic congestion. That cause more social costs. So every year, Seoul metropolitan government allocates some money. Maybe in case of Seoul metropolitan government is allocated $300 million every year for the subsidy to bus companies. In that way, they have every year they secure the budget for the bus company subsidy to make public transportation more sustainable and more convenient. And for the second questions, actually, we don't have any regulation to limit the number of vehicles. The mentioned 3 million car is just the current numbers of vehicles. So actually, we don't, our government does not force people not to have the cars, actually, yeah. And you mentioned that you don't know ODA. ODA stands for Official Development Assistance. Actually, that is kind of like aid program that Korean government provide some technical assistance with financial resources to Indonesia government to support their public transportation infrastructure improving. So actually, as I mentioned earlier, now Korea's MODERATOR is Ministry of Transport. Korea MODERATOR is conducting ODA project, aid grant project to Indonesia regarding implementation of a bus information management system. And you mentioned that how much the shift from, how much it will shift the car to the public transport. Actually, I don't know exactly, but in case of Seoul, actually, the improving the service of public transportation encourages people a lot to use public transportation instead of their car, because in Seoul the traffic congestion is really heavy, and it takes like more than 1.5 hours to travel point A to B. But if now people think that if they use public transportation, it's cheaper and it's faster and it's more convenient. That is because of the Seoul government's effort to improve the service of public transportation. So I hope the ODA project will somehow help to the Indonesian, MPPTJ to implement the efficient, the PMS system. Actually, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for your answer. Committee, please. We are moving to the next question from the participant. The third question is from, please, committee. From Pak Saptandri, Mr. Saptandri from BPTJ, Greater Jakarta Transportation Authority, to Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro. The question is, in the operation when managing buses in Japan, do they use single operator or multi-operators or company? If it is multi-operators, how do they manage financing and the share of revenue? Mr. Yamakoshi, please.
Okay, thank you for the important question. In Japan, each operator gets the approval or license from the ministry. So I'm not sure of the meaning of the multi-operator here in this context, but in Japan, one company gets the one license for the company. So there are no cases of multi-operators. Or if I may be incorrect, could you please, I would like to be informed if if there are other aspects for the words multi-operators. In Japan, there can't be operations with two joint operators. In Japan, it never happens. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, I think it's okay. Thank you, Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro, for your answer. And please, committee, we still have the time, very limited time. Now we are moving to the question number 4. Please, committee. The question number 4 is from Arif Yanuar from the cadet of PTDI STTD. This is a student. He is students to Monsieur Jean-François Doulet, France. How did Transportation Authority change the mindset of market for travel or logistic deliveries, especially on land routes, to use train other than buses or truck? Does the government provide subsidies for financing the operations and maintenance of railway infrastructure to railway company for all lines operated by railway company or only part of the lines? Monsieur Doulet, s'il vous plaît.
Yeah, so two questions. So on the first one, the intermodality between we say trucks and railway system. This is something quite new in Europe. We have some interesting experimentation in the south part of France, from the port of Marseille along the Mediterranean Sea towards the northern part of France. So this is a quite interesting operation when you move your freight transport from road base, from trucks to train. Once again, it's pretty new, and in France, the most common transportation mode for freight is still trucks, so road-based transport. Can you show me again the second question? I can't.
Please, committee, the second question for Monsieur Doulet, please.
Yeah, so contrary to the Japanese context, to the Japanese model, our public transport system, including our railway system, is almost totally subsidized by our government. Our government invests in railway transportation infrastructure, and of course give backup solutions to our only railway company. We have only one railway company, which is SNCF, our national railway operator that operates interurban mobility solutions, but also, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to the Paris region area, that also provides regional and regional transportation solutions. So once again, the French system is mainly publicly subsidized, but as I said also earlier, the trend is towards opening our transportation systems, our transportation market to more competition. But this is something that is going a long way, step by step.
Thank you, Monsieur Doulet, for your answer. Committee, please. We still have the time, limited time, but we have still opportunity to present our last question. Question number 5, please, committee. The last question from Walida Makfiroh. She is still cadet also in Land Transportation Polytechnic, to Mr. Bambang Prihartono. What is the most challenge to manage the integration of public transportation in Indonesia? Is motorcycle taxi, like ojek, should be considered in the integration of transportation system? Please, Pak Bambang.
Thank you, Mbak Walida, for your question. What is the challenge to manage the integration of public transportation in Indonesia? Yes, as you may aware that when my presentation that we have several modes of transportation. We have taxi, we have commuter line, and nowadays we have MRT and also the LRT. So I think we have to integrate between one mode to another mode of transportation. But our challenge is the responsibility in terms of institutional is different for each mode of transportation. For example, commuter line is responsible for the PTDI, is the part of the central government. And then we have the MRT, that's responsible under the local government, in this case, Jakarta City. And also we have individual transportation. So how integrated, how to integrate it? That's our challenge. That's why we need one institution, how integrate, how to integrate among of the mode of transportation. I give you a good example, when the local government to build the corridor number 13, for the busway, you know that the ridership should come from the Tangerang Selatan, for example, but DKI cannot build the corridor number 13 until Tangerang Selatan. They stop in the border area. This is a good example that it is our challenge how integrate among the infrastructure, in physical and also in the payment. Maybe Bu Eli also can hear today how integrate the payment system. Now until nowadays we don't have any good integration payment today. It's still in process. That's our challenge. That's why we have to push. We have to push to integrate not only in physical one but also in terms of payment. And now in new era, that the IT become our partner in mass transportation, become our part in transportation. That's we have to facing. We have to facing. We're facing the modern one. That's why project become one part of our transportation. That's why we consider, government has decided that the Gojek or Grab is a part of transportation. That's why we have to integrate. Yeah, we have to integrate the Gojek because they one of mode transportation. I think that's all, Pak Hananto. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Bambang, for your clear answer to our students in Land Transportation Polytechnic. Due to the time limit, unfortunately, this will be the end of our Q&A, question and answer session, but not get the end of our webinar. We apologize for other questions that are not read and answered by our expert and speakers from Indonesia and overseas. So, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to express gratitude for all our speakers today and also for our participants in Zoom meeting as well as in YouTube, Land Transportation Academy. Thank you. See you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless us all. I return the time to my friend Agisna. Agisna, time is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, thank you, Mr. Prakoso. I believe that the opportunity should be met and the changes should be pursued. By the completion of this event, we believe that this is a good start for us to stay connected as we are all hoping for the same goal, same mission, and same vision towards the improvement of public transport system and integration of Indonesia. The next session, we will give the certificate of appreciation to all of the speakers and moderator. First, the appreciation will be given to Mr. Mathew Tharakan. Thank you, Mr. Mathew. And the next appreciation will be given to Ms. Shu Park. Gamsahamnida, Park Shu Si. And then the next appreciation will be given to Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro. Arigatou gozaimasu, Mr. Toshihiro-san. Then the next appreciation will be given to Mr. François Doulet. Merci beaucoup, Mr. Doulet. And the following appreciation will be given to Mr. Bambang Prihartono. Terima kasih banyak, Pak Bambang. Finally, the last appreciation will be given to Mr. Hananto Prakoso as a moderator for tonight's event. Matur suwun sangat, Pak Hananto. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let me remind all the participants to fulfill the registration link. Before we end our webinar, there will be a closing remark from Mr. Hindro Surahmat. Would you please, Mr. Hindro Surahmat, we're expecting your remark.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu. Excellency Minister of Transportation of Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Budi Karya Sumadi, the Honorable Head of Human Resources Development Agency, Bapak Sugihardjo, distinguished speaker and discussion, Mr. Mathew Tharakan, Ms. Shu Park, Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro, Mr. Jong François Doulet, Bapak Bambang Prihartono, Bapak Hananto Prakoso, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of Polytechnic of Land Transportation Indonesia, STTD, Ministry of Transportation of Republic of Indonesia, I really thank you for being in this virtual event. I would like also express my sincere appreciation to the Excellency Minister of Transportation, Bapak Budi Karya Sumadi, who has given direction for us today, and to the Honorable Head of Human Resources Development Agency, Bapak Sugihardjo, for the opening remarks. Great thanks to our distinguished speaker that have shared valuable information and knowledge. This webinar has brought us great perspective on how the world organizes the transport regulatory with benchmarks from America, South Korea, Japan, France, and Indonesia. I greatly appreciate all participants on this webinar. I am convinced that your activities, participation, and valuable contribution will provide substantial outcome and can be followed by regarding steps to be taken to improve public transportation integration. Finally, by saying Alhamdulillah and praise to God, this international webinar of benchmarking on the role of the transport regulatory in managing public transport integration to other countries is obviously closed. Thank you for the successful and meaningful discussion. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hindro Surahmat, for your remarkable closing remarks. Indeed, we all know to do the talk. Finally, we are in the end of our webinar tonight. I'm Agisna Yasmin Anjani. On behalf of all committee, I would like to express gratitude for all the speakers and also to our participants. See you again next time, Mr. Mathew Tharakan. Down the bio, Park Shuasi. Tanoshikata des, Mr. Yamakoshi Toshihiro-san. Our person, Mr. Zong François Doulet. Sampai jumpa lagi, Bapak Bambang Prihartono dan para hadirin sekalian. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Bambang. Thank you, Mathew. Thank you, Yamakoshi.
Thank you, Hananto.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Thank you, Mr. Doulet. Yeah. Yeah, you can leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Mathew. Thank you, Mathew. See you.
Bye. Nice meeting you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guna memenuhi kebutuhan sumber daya manusia di bidang transportasi darat, pada tanggal 18 September 1951, Presiden pertama Republik Indonesia, Insinyur Soekarno, meresmikan Akademi Lalu Lintas (ALL) yang sekarang telah berubah nama menjadi Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD). Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD) merupakan sekolah kedinasan di bawah naungan Kementerian Perhubungan, di mana sekolah ini ditujukan untuk mencetak perwira perhubungan yang berakhlak cerdas dan prima. Perubahan ini membawa dampak yang cukup besar bagi kampus biru ini, karena dengan berubahnya Sekolah Tinggi Transportasi Darat menjadi politeknik akan membuka kesempatan lebih besar bagi kampus ini untuk lebih bisa bersaing dengan sekolah tinggi lain di Indonesia, baik kedinasan maupun non-kedinasan. Transportasi Darat. Program Diploma 4 Transportasi Darat merupakan program studi unggulan di Politeknik Transportasi Darat Indonesia (STTD). Diploma 3 Manajemen Transportasi Darat. Pada program Diploma 3 Manajemen Transportasi Darat mencetak taruna-taruni yang ahli dalam mengidentifikasi aspek-aspek yang berkaitan dengan permintaan dan pelayanan transport di bidang jalan. Diploma 3 Manajemen Perkeretaapian. Adanya program studi manajemen perkeretaapian bertujuan untuk menciptakan perwira berhubungan di bidang kereta api.
This is operator from Indonesia, so we would like to say thank you very much for coming. We are going to close this platform in 3, 2, 1, close. Thank you very much.